Well, good day, fine people, and thank you for joining us today. We are blessed to have Greg DeShields, Executive Director of Tourism Diversity Matters, with us today. Greg is a longtime tourism and hospitality professional and a native Philadelphian. I'm a native Philadelphian, or South Jersey, might as well be, with a passion for his work and is dedicated to giving back to the next generation of hospitality leaders. He's a frequent presenter specific to diversity, equity, and inclusion fundamentals, and helps assess plans, strategies, and implementation to reinforce the need for organizations to lead inclusion from the top, which is so important. He's a qualified tourism, hospitality, and academic professional, certified hospitality educator, proficient in developing and implementing plans, strategies, and initiatives specifically designed to raise destinations' image for diverse, multicultural travel. So welcome, Greg, and thank you. And today, the goal for today is to talk a little bit about you, your organization, Travel Diversity Matters, disability travel, I guess, as it relates to intellectual disabilities and how we can support our people, and the importance of learning about the misunderstood disorder of autism.
Mm.
We were just talking a little bit about what you just created in Boston, and for their Convention Visitors Bureau. Do you want to just real quick talk about that and what the goal was, and why
Sure.
somebody would want to, why a CVB or a DMO or a destination marketing organization would want to do what you did?
Absolutely. And Becky, let me just say thank you so much for the invitation to do this. As a former podcaster, any opportunity I get to do a podcast is exciting for me. I miss those days. I'm going to return to those. You watch. It's
I know,
such a
I'm
great.
telling you, like when we had the broadcast radio show, we miss it. And it's funny because I did it with my husband and someone else, and he really liked the microphone.
Oh my God, yes.
He loves the microphone and the headphones, and it's not the same anymore. We don't even need it. But we
Oh
might
my
just have to have him have one, even if it's unplugged.
Well, congratulations on doing this. I think, as I recall, it was always a great learning opportunity for me. And, I'm thrilled to be able to share, the work that we do at Tourism Diversity Matters. But specifically, the project that we did in Boston was their commitment over a year ago now to be much more diverse and inclusive. They actually launched a campaign called All Inclusive Boston. And working with the president and CEO, Martha Sheraton, as well as her vice president, Helena Ajakai, we were really focused on not just looking at obviously those dimensions of diversity that deals with race and ethnicity, but also the overall 19 different dimensions of diversity, especially as it relates to those individuals who may have all different forms of abled or disabled capabilities. And our efforts were most recently centered upon workforce, because for all that the organization would like to do internally to be as inclusive as possible, to live the truth of all inclusive Boston, it was also about how we engage individuals to work in our industry. So we did a pilot program with Boston University in 2022 and found that there was without any doubt a palette to do a inaugural and then later signature career fair in Boston. We were fantastically surprised and pleased to see that we had 87 employers. We also had 250 job seekers. We held it at the Hyatt Regency in downtown Boston. But I will tell you, for us as we were planning it, and certainly based on the work that we do at Tourism Diversity Matters, it was important to think of whether or not it was inclusive. It was one thing to schedule employers, and it was another thing to reach out to job seekers. But there are a number of reasons why, as organizations think in terms of their workforce development strategy, that ensuring that you looked at any and all barriers that might exist and address those accordingly. We had an extensive conversation with our online tool provider, Career Fair Plus, which is fantastic. And they were maybe perhaps not as familiar as they should be with this type of concern when it comes to workforce development. They were extremely open to our recommendations. And as you can imagine, I wanted to put together a robust list. And we were at a Hyatt hotel, which had a significant amount of internal protocol that is in place. And we felt good about the process. But, as you know, you can't just look at something and say we did a good job without not wanting to go further. And we've done a lot of work in Mesa, and big shout out to them and what they've done with the autistic community. But I know that for us, if we were to be even more narrow focused around it, I think there's so much more that we could do as we think of producing it in 2024, which is why I'm thrilled to be a part of your conversation today.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you. Yeah, we were talking about Greg Rosen, who is a high functioning autistic and employment advocate, really involved in Massachusetts, but I think he's near Worcester, and certainly a connection that would probably be valuable, as he is an employment advocate for those with autism. And, what, you know, we have learned, he's learned through his own personal experience. And what I've learned over the last 10 years being in the industry is that really, because autism is a communication disorder, it's really the job interview. You can fill out an application, but then when they go for the job interview, um, you know, they they don't, they think in very black and white terms, right? So if you're like, where do you want to be in 5 years, or like all these conceptual things are very difficult, they think they're going to come and talk about the job description and how their experience relates to it, or how well they can do. So they get weeded out very early on in the process. So Greg is working with a couple of organizations up there and developed a cohort program that they're instituting in Empower, which is his employer. And so that's been really interesting as a pilot program, and they hope to roll that out corporate wide. I'd love to make that connection for you. And that's the thing, like, with autism, what we have done, what my organization, Champion Autism Network, and the Autism Travel Club have done is, we provide training for businesses, whether it's the hospitality industry or essential workers, to provide supports and accommodations for the people with autism so that the family can go experience a traditional family experience, whether that's a meal out or going to a movie, a vacation at a resort. And then, of course, you have to have the essential workers with education and the first responders as well. We have these fabulous relationships now with these businesses that are trained and aware. And the next step would be for them to employ individuals with autism. So that's really what the next step is, right? In the strategic plan is to really leverage those relationships. They already have trained and aware employees who might want to be mentors or coaches for people with autism, so that we don't have to have, coaches that are paid for by another organization. So we're really trying to think about it. But as what you're trying to do, there's so many challenges. It's not just having somebody who's qualified or interested, but like then transportation becomes an issue. And I'm sure that's something that you have to tackle a lot of times as well.
I do, but I do want to, for the sake of your audience, do a shout out that, your training is one that I think is attractive to people who are very busy and are trying to figure out, where do I carve out the time to do something? So I just want to do a shout out to you. They're short and efficient in a way that people can really be engaged, and you are tested in terms of your knowledge. And I feel that the way that you've designed it, it is very, for lack of a better word, user friendly, while
Okay.
also being very informative. And I think that that's really important as we look at how you would take that training and apply it in a work setting to educate your workers, and then look at the operations of your organization to actually begin to execute the stuff that you just learned. But I will tell you, as an industry, we certainly are navigating change. And when I say we're navigating change, our industry has certainly evolved in the use of technology and the delivery of customer service in a different way than we did prior to the pandemic. So in the pandemic, we still had a lot of labor intensity. There was somebody who was picking up your bag, and there was someone who was checking you in. So even if someone took the training that you have described, it's labor intense. So they can begin to implement that almost immediately. But we've evolved to having more technology integrated in the guest experience. We have fewer people doing more, so maybe less attention span. And to that degree, I think it will certainly be important for our industry to evolve as we begin to embrace and provide the travel experience for those individuals who have autism. But I was very fortunate to get a statistical quote of the economic impact of people who travel with various forms of disabilities. That's like $54 billion. That's a big market for us. So this
Sure.
is not just because we want to do it to be nice. As it relates to our industry, it certainly is a part of how we generate profitable operations. So absolutely.
So one of the things that you had mentioned a little bit earlier, and I think you said it was 19 dimensions.
Absolutely.
Can you just elaborate on that just a little bit?
Sure. Most people, when the conversation comes up about diversity, they generally go to what they know. I would say that it's our lazy brain that kicks in. So we think of race and ethnicity, we may think of LGBTQ, but there are 19 different dimensions as you think of you as an individual. And some of it is certainly who you identify as a community, because your dimensions are also interpreted by you as an individual, your workplace, your affiliations, and that starts to multiply them. But you also think of it, there are your faith-based dimensions of who you are, and there are diversity in terms of that. Age is another dimension of diversity. As you think of boomers and you think of Gen Z, there is without any doubt dimensions of diversity amongst all of those and different perspectives and points of view. Obviously, the indigenous community is in there, and there are people who are able disabled. And I say it that way because there are some who really embrace the fact that they still feel quite abled, and some may identify based upon their disability. But those dimensions of diversity aren't as commonly understood, or quite frankly, as respected as they should be, because we can't just put people in one particular box and feel as though that's the best way to identify them. I know I spoke with a gentleman who was working at a rather luxurious resort in Colorado and was struggling to figure out how they could have more diversity because he only thought of it as race. And as I kind of engaged in further conversation, we found for him, age is really the issue of diversity. He has a lot of longtime skiers who are now in their 70s and 80s, and all of these younger skiers who have a completely different approach to skiing, as well as the overall ski experience. And kind of navigating that diversity in itself was like a big aha for him. So it is about looking at what those 19 dimensions are and using that as your premise as to how you approach diversity.
So I'm on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee or Council for the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce. Of course, representing intellectual disability, autism. And it has been quite eye-opening for me, because I come like with my own myopic box.
Mhm.
So it's been really, really interesting to me, and not only interesting, but somewhat overwhelming. I can only imagine these 19 dimensions, and then you're talking about the like multiplying and all this other stuff. It can become overwhelming. So I know that part of your job is to go into an organization. I know that you work with the Myrtle Beach Chamber, and the engagement was quite some time, and really getting in there and, like you said, digging and finding out what the issue is and the opportunities or what to do. And then you mentioned any and all, right? Like trying to serve. It's incredible and can become quickly, like I said, overwhelming. Like, how do you, in what your organization does, and you as a professional and what you've learned, because you're kind of like a therapist, I guess, in some ways, like really like, how do you weed through all this, especially like legacy employees, and like there's so much that goes into that. Like, how do you do it?
Well, I think it's always important for organizations to know, number one, that you are not fixing this. And as long as you don't go in with the thought that I'm going to find something wrong and I'm going to take it apart and put it back together and everything is going to move along, swimmingly, I would strongly encourage you not to approach it that way. And then most importantly, to realize that the majority of these issues are based on culture of your organization. And it is having some internal assessment or understanding of your values and your beliefs as it relates to the organization, because there are complexity issues that are associated with the environment which DEI lives, but the culture may in fact create that. For example, individuals may talk about microaggressions, people who say things and they're not very appropriate. And the idea is, well, maybe we should have a microaggression training session. But that culture of the organization kind of allowed for microaggressions to exist. So kind of treating that is really not the root of where the problem is. It's more cultural. And when we say look at the culture, some organizations may have to admit that our culture is not to be as diverse and as inclusive as we would like. So it's not then necessarily about doing everything, it's about determining what we can do. And maybe that's a better way of then suggesting that you look at the dimensions of diversity, because maybe as you begin your process, it's not about looking at how you conquer issues of race and ethnicity, but perhaps your organization has a culture, has a belief of embracing individuals with intellectual disabilities. And to that degree, we're going to go all in on that and build our best practices that would then be dispersed across other communities. And the last thing I will say is it's always about small wins. It's never about like having this big splashy, we did all of this. I'd be much more focused and would highly recommend that organizations look at what are the small wins. How do you get your language correct? How do you, prioritize new strategies and see that they have certainly helped you to attract and service more customers or customers in a better way than you've done before. And to that degree, you start to unpack what all of this is in a way that kind of supports that phrase that you've heard, that this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. This is work that you will take some time to evolve.
And it's kind of, it's, well, not funny, haha, but when you're talking about how the culture, right? And kind of like what we do, the training and having people involved and that kind of type thing, businesses and restaurants supporting us. It's not for every business. It's just not, right? I'm not going to ask Ruth's Chris to, I could ask, but whether they're interested or not, it's better to have like a family oriented, little bit more casual. So it's not for every business, and kind of like, and so you would pick, like you said, based on the culture, the proper business. And really, and that it's an alignment of, vision where, you're not going to march into an organization that doesn't have the culture and isn't interested.
Correct.
So, the alignment is important, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you, because there's, I think that
Mhm.
there's some fun that we could have. We could definitely play together, right? We can get out there, and I know that you are, your organization, and you travel a ton, you're out there doing all kinds of things, and not only for the DEI community in Philadelphia, which you have served an incredible amount and continue to, so I applaud you for that,
Thank you.
but also the different destinations. So like, is there a market or a destination that you're particularly proud of? Like when you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, like that was such a win. That was, yay, yay.
You know what? I will say we've done maybe about 10 to 14 projects now in different destinations. They've all had different reasons for wanting to do it. And if it was one thing that I would say, it would probably resonate for all. And it's not just being politically correct, but a leader who decides that they want to assess their organization, peel it back and show where they're vulnerable, where their Achilles heel is, what they don't know. And because
So not
mostly,
fun. I hate
oh, they trust me. They have used other words to describe what that
Oh, I
feeling
know, we're a
is.
family organization. I don't know what to say, but yeah,
But I will
peeling
say
back
that,
the layers. Ugh.
yeah, I mean, I think leaders who we've worked with, regardless of the market, serve as examples to many other leaders that you can do this. And this does not have to be defined based on what you may interpret to be only race and ethnicity, and that there are other ways that an assessment helps you get a better understanding of your culture to embark upon a variety of different things in order to benefit your team, your stakeholders, and most importantly, your customers. And those that we work with, they are charged with creating economic value to the destinations and to be as innovative and as creative as they can. And the more inclusive they are, they build more market share, more, customers that either want to visit on a weekend trip or bring an annual conference there. So I would say that they're all, I think, very unique in the work that they've done. If I shouted out to any, I know, Myrtle Beach was our first, and they wanted to, as a result of the work, bring on a chief diversity officer, and they did. It was fantastic to see
Yeah.
from the recommendation that it executed, into an actual
Oh,
practice. And I think of the work that we've done, certainly in Boston. It was about how do we really impact our workforce. Like all of this work should really help to enhance the quality of the life of our citizens. So while they're all quite different, if there were some that I just kind of thought about that were quite notable, those would be two, because one was actual action, but the other was so broad reaching that it really wanted to impact the citizens of a destination. So those are some thoughts I think immediately come to mind.
I was just, we were talking about how Myrtle Beach Area Chamber hired a DEI officer, and God bless Danette. She's the woman. And every time I see her, her work is cut out for her. She's got smoke coming out her ears, and God bless her, but she is just jumping in, and it's been really, really fun to work with her and just kind of be a part of like the evolution, right,
Evelyn.
of
Yeah.
this market, which is
Mhm.
really fun. So, what you're doing is kind of highlighting for these different destinations, like niche travel opportunities, and which
Mhm.
is kind of what we are, Autism Travel Club is bringing to the table. We all know it's a loyal and growing population, right? Now it's 1 in 36. The CDC has released lately with people being diagnosed with autism. So, we all know it's on the rise. It's interesting though, I was just talking to somebody today when I talk to business leaders and business people about them getting involved and why they should care, right? So it's 1 in 36 now. When I started this, it was 1 in 120. Uh,
Mhm.
so that should mean something to people,
Mhm.
but really what it comes back to, that should mean something to the business community and the opportunity. Autism is like kind of the low hanging fruit, right? It's an easy win.
Mhm.
You lead with love, you just make some simple modifications. It's
Mhm.
not like you have to have your ramp in an incline or a 36-inch wide door.
Mhm.
Fairly simple accommodations for our people.
Mhm.
So let's take that easy win.
Right. But
Really,
you go
to
ahead.
the businesses, that number, right? I was saying 1 in 120 is now 1 in 136. It's that number one where it says 1 in 36.
Mhm.
That's what matters to me as an autism parent. I could give a crap about the 36 or whatever. You're like, I've got my one,
Mhm.
I've got my why.
Mhm.
And that is what motivates me, is that we are dealing with families who have the one. And
Mhm.
that's how we want to support them,
Mhm.
and in the best way that we can.
But what you certainly have clarified, as because when I was listening to your training program, it was 1 in 54, and now
Now we
like you
have to,
said,
yeah, we have to update that.
yeah. But what and kind of observing that and thinking in terms of us as operators of destinations or hotels and restaurants and that sort of thing, as we get better in understanding our customers, we have a better opportunity to grow our market share and the products and services that we offer. The reality of it is, as I was looking at some of the things that you can do to create a more welcoming environment for a person who has autism, there's a lot of customization that quite frankly fits well in a pricing structure. And that may be exactly what a family is comfortable with paying in
Yep.
order to have a fantastic experience. So
Mm.
we as operators may very well be leaving money on the table just simply because we don't know, and then we don't know how to market, and we don't know how to engage our customer. And I think that's across all the different spectrums of diversity. It certainly allows for travelers who want the same that everybody wants, a clean room and great food and great shopping. Like we all want that, but we also want to have some more specific interpretations of it. There are experiences that families and that idea of families who travel with children with autism means that while you are focused on the one, there's a whole lot of support that tends to go around that one. And when you think of that, it's not like just one person is staying in my hotel or in my restaurant. It may be a whole family that is joining, and the work that we're doing for the one is really going to engage three or four others. So it's not a restaurant check that comes with a single meal. It's probably a family meal that took place,
Exactly.
or they ordered a van instead of a car. So I think it's understanding as business people who are always interested in looking at ways that we provide products and services that create new opportunity and new customers and benefit to our employees so that they have more jobs that they can work at and that we create more dollars that are taxable in our destination. It's really connecting that business opportunity associated with it and being much more efficient in understanding the recommendations that are there in terms of what you can do in your operation to meet the needs and the expectations of the guests.
You're so well said. So, do you have like a stretch goal as far as this is a market or this is something like, so my stretch goal is I want to have the autism awareness and the autism travel club around the world. So that's me. I want the trainings to be in other languages and culturally relevant in those markets and other countries and everything else. So like that's my stretch goal.
Mhm.
So I know that Tourism Diversity Matters has been around for 2, 3 years now.
Yeah,
And
we're
so
going into year 3.
it was like, so, not exactly sure how it came to be, but, and like, and you're already making big splashes. Like you said, you're already in like 10 to 14 markets and you're doing all this in a very short period of time. What is like an aspirational market or like, what's your end game? What's your stretch goal?
So, Becky, our industry has certainly had a variety of organizations that have added some really stellar initiatives and programs around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this is not just as it relates to like when we started in 2020. There are groups that go way back to the early 60s, looking at how we created access for travel for African Americans. So we're not new to this game, but as it relates to our industry, our stretch goal had been from the day that we started was to be the go-to source for the industry. And what we want to do is evolve in terms of our knowledge, our expertise, our capability, our capacity, so that we are that go-to. We really would like if there's a destination that is really, hyper focused around being much more successful around welcoming visitors who have autism, that we would be their go-to source. We may have some knowledge and expertise, but we certainly know who you should be plugged into in order to do that. We want to be that resource around all research around DEI in our industry, that rather than to do a Google search, you should definitely go straight to the library of TDM and gain that information. And as an industry that really would like to go with credible individuals who know our industry and know the subject matter, that we have access to those databases of individuals. It was always intended and really serves as our stretch goal to be that go-to source. Not that we deliver the specific products and services that individuals need, but we should be for the industry the place that they can go to get connected into whoever and wherever it is to solve their problem of this subject matter.
That's exciting. So it sounds like you could, if you're not already, because maybe this is something I don't haven't researched or seen about your organization, is that it really could be a membership model as you're talking about that for being a resource or a hub for that. Have you considered something like that?
Membership is certainly an option, but membership does create somewhat of barriers. One of the things that we identified ourselves as is a greater good organization.
Mhm.
And, our first year out, we were in like Nebraska, we were in Montana, we were in Wisconsin. I mean, we were in some communities that were very small in terms of the type of resources that they had to get access to things, which means some of them had to choose between this membership and that membership. And as they engaged with us and they wanted us to come out and talk to them about certain issues, our only request was, for them to make it possible for us to be there. And many were so gracious of that because otherwise they'd probably have to pay a consultant fee in order to make the arrangements to have that happen. So we are very much committed to being able to reduce barriers to have access to the kind of information we have. So I don't know if it would be ever in our short-term goal to be a membership-based organization, But we certainly welcome organizations that want to be partners, which allows for them to proudly show that they support TDM. But I think for where we are in our evolution as an organization, um, beginning with the belief that we are there to be a genuine resource for the organization, I think speaks highly of not just what we do daily, but even the culture that our leaders, embedded as we started.
That's awesome. So, a little bit about you. Where so like you do a lot of traveling, right? And it's kind of like voluntold, right? You've got to go where you're told to go and
Uh-huh.
where you're asked to go, and you're very gracious, and it seems like you're jet setting all over the place. So do you have a favorite location or somewhere you really want to check out? And it could be anywhere.
Oh my God. For years, my husband and I went to Hawaii, Waikiki, and we stayed at the Halekulani, which is just the most incredible place to visit. So if there was some place that, if they ever want us to come out and do a training, I'm there. Um, we traveled internationally. We spent some time over in Hong Kong, which I love, in Tokyo, which I love. But if I ever had the opportunity, of course, to go back again to Singapore, I loved Singapore. It's got such a westernized, type of culture. Certainly, hospitality and tourism is like at the forefront of everything that they do. But I've enjoyed the discovery of a variety of different places because we are in such small unknown areas. I still tell everyone about driving late night. It was actually driving. I was speaking to the destination marketing organization in Kalispell, Montana. Well, first off, I didn't even know that you could fly directly to Kalispell. Well, you really can't. You have to
I've never
fly.
even heard of Kalispell, so
So
you're one up
Kalispell
on
is
me.
it's a wonderful. Well, if you watch Yellowstone, they've done some shout outs to Kalispell.
Okay, well, I do. I'm a Yellowstone devotee, but that must have just gone
So
right over.
yeah. Well, actually, they talked about Whitefish, and Whitefish is a resort that is, maybe about, I don't know, 5 or 6 miles from downtown Kalispell. But it's an incredible, town that is filled with independent stores. Most importantly, steak, beef is always on the menu. And I just remember driving through the town and I'm thinking to myself, I'm in like the middle of Kalispell. Like, how does a guy come from Philadelphia end up in the middle of Kalispell, Montana, right? So I love that side of the work that I do. I was in Nebraska and I was just so excited to be there. And I asked someone to take a picture of me once at the airport in front of the sign, and she just felt so bad for me. She said, "This is the only place that you can go and get a picture taken, right?" So I find that although I do get to go to some great places, and I mentioned the two, I've always gotten a kick out of going to these places that I would have never thought that I would go to, and I meet some of the most fantastic people when I go. And to that of it, I really appreciative to be in the role that I am because I don't know if I would have ever had that opportunity to go and meet, some incredible people like I have.
So one of the challenges that we have as an organization, in growth and, wanting to, people when they hear about the program that we created specifically here, the Grand Strand is our proving ground. It's where we
Mhm,
started. It's where we developed all of our standard operating procedures for our sensory friendly events. And it's where we started the training program where everything used to be live and on site. But then we took all that and COVID taught us all how to learn virtually, and yay, opened up, whipped off the blinders.
mhm,
But, we can go into other markets, but really what's important, I guess, is the boots on the ground. And
mhm,
that's kind of like one thing that I think like when you travel to these destinations, the DMOs and CVBs are your boots on the ground, right? And you're there to kind of like help them see, learn, come up with a strategic plan on what their goals are and everything else. And that's one thing that we're kind of looking forward to because with the launch of the rebranding of the CAN card to the autism travel card, now
mhm,
all of a sudden it's speaking plainly, right? Because if you leave Myrtle Beach, nobody knows what CAN is or the CAN
mhm,
card, but Autism Travel Club and card pretty much says it all, right?
mhm,
So, but having the boots on the ground is really important. So our next step is to like enlist ambassadors or maybe
mhm,
CVBs or DMOs. And, we are actually really fortunate to have established a purposeful partnership with Miles Partnership,
Mhm.
to do this as well. So whatever we could do to play together also with, you know, what you're doing would be wonderful. So is there anything else, because we can wrap it up because it's been a while and I know that you're super busy. Where's your next trip? Where are you going next?
So I am going to the Laurel Highlands, which is near Latrobe, Pennsylvania, on, on Sunday. There is a marketing summit, and I'll be keynote for their conference. And I have to tell you, I am so thrilled to be a part of it. It's an interesting group because they've had a lot of focus around digital marketing, but have learned that there are ways that they can reach out to and should be reaching out to diverse communities through those platforms. So we'll help them to kind of understand why that is important, and give them some recommendations how they do that. But I think of all the things that we as Tourism Diversity Matters has been focusing on, our involvement is to be more of a resource around how DEI is evolving, and how organizations can't look at how perhaps they wanted to do this in 2020, and instead look at how it has evolved in 2023. And today it is about organizations committing to do this because, number one, it's part of their culture, but number two, they can begin to tell more of a quantitative business benefit, and not business case, but a direct benefit for it. Because while culture of your organization is important, um, things like DEI should not necessarily be determined as how you drive your business. It helps you drive your business. And to that degree, as we engage whoever we speak to, we just encourage them to be mindful of how it evolves, and how it has to continue to play a current benefit and value to your organization.
So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what do they do?
So they can go to tourismdiversitymatters.org, and unfolds our incredible website, which, by the way, it at the top of the fold will promote our upcoming inclusion conference. It's called the Collective Experience. That will be in Philadelphia on October 23rd and 24th.
Can I come?
You should certainly be there. We have actually, when we did the original planning, we had partnered with the Office of Disabilities in Philadelphia, which had incredible tracks that they were recommending. And I would love to be able to integrate your program in it. So we'll definitely talk.
All right.
Absolutely.
So Greg DeShields, I know I'm gonna get this wrong. Tourism Diversity Matters, like all of a sudden, like just that got me excited and off track and smoke, and so sorry about that. But thank you so much for your time, your insight, the wonderful work that you do, and whatever I can do to help and serve you, please don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you. It has been my pleasure. And by the way, you could always just say TDM.
TDM. Not time for now. TTFN. Bye bye.